The New York G-Men have upgraded their defense in the front seven and the secondary. Paulson Adebo, maybe my favorite corner on the open market, has signed with the Giants to become their CB1 in 2025 and hopefully beyond. He signed a 3-year, $30 million contract. Very underrated player, one of Bill Belichick's favorites from the 2024 NFL season, listed on his second team All-Pro. That's what Bill Belichick thought of Paulson Adebo, Giants fans. He just didn't play enough games to truly prove it this year. He was injured. Also, the Giants signed Chauncey Golston late on March 10th, this Monday. $19.5 million, 3-year deal, a starter for the defensive line of the Cowboys in 2024. Another one has left for a new team. And Brian Daboll and the boys said, hey, we'll steal that guy from the Cowboys. Why not? They also signed a backup tackle in James Hudson, $12 million with another $4 million in incentives over 2 years. A guy that's played for the Cleveland Browns as a pinch left or right tackle. We'll talk about him. And veteran Chris Board has signed with the Giants, a very good special teamer over the past many years in the NFL. He is one of the best in the game. 2-year deal worth up to $6 million. Don't really need to mention Chris Board too much. He's a really good special teamer, a backup linebacker, a guy that would be like your fourth linebacker. He can play a little bit of linebacker, especially against the run. He's a really good tackler, but you don't really want him out there very much. He's a core special teams player. Very, very calculated, very smart, high IQ, high effort player for your special teams. But that's a good type of guy you want. A captain, a guy that you want on your team, in your locker room, especially for a culture like the Giants that needs some turning around. Let's begin with Paulson Adebo, though, who I felt was maybe the best value in free agency at corner, especially when you look at some of the contracts that have been given up to Charvarius Ward and Carlton Davis and those other guys that were near the same category. An 80.5 coverage grade for Adebo this past season. That was really, really good. 14th in the NFL this past season. Okay. Or was that last season? That was last season, guys. He was actually 12th last season. This season, his grading wasn't quite as good. Still solid. He allowed a 59.6 reception percentage. Last year, the year before, 2023, he had a 56.8 reception percentage allowed, which that's pretty impressive, okay? So the last 2 years, he's had under a 60% completion allowed. The years previous, he had a 65 and a 69, okay? He does tend to allow yards when he gives up catches. So his yards per reception allowed, 12 this year, 15 the year before, 13 the year before, 14 the year before. So it tends to be down the field because he plays a lot of man. Now, one thing about Adebo, the last 2 years, 1 touchdown allowed in both seasons, 3 interceptions this year, 4 interceptions the year before. Okay? 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions. 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions. So he's only allowed 2 touchdowns and has 7 picks over the last 2 years. 67 passer rating allowed in 2024, 69 passer rating allowed in 2023. So very good corner, perimeter corner. He's got good size, 6'1", 192, really good in man, really good in press. That's the style that you're going to get in this player. Played for New Orleans under Dennis Allen, very physical style of coverage. They like to bump those receivers off routes, get in their face, play with physicality, hold a little bit, be clutchy and grabby, right? 3 out of his 4 NFL seasons, he has at least 3 interceptions. That's another thing where he gets his hands on the football. These last 2 years, he has 28 passes defensed. 28, okay? And he only played 7 games this year. He had 10 passes defensed in 7 games, okay? 2 forced fumbles in 2023, 76 tackles in 2023 is his career high. He is only 25, turning 26. He is 26 in July. And they only had to give him 3 years, $30 million. That to me is a bargain. I think that's one of the best signings that I've seen all day. When you talk about the player, you talk about the age, you talk about the upside, you talk about the fit, you talk about the need. all these reasons. Pro Football Reference backs up Pro Football Focus's gradings. Only one touchdown allowed, as it said, on both sites. 71 passer rating, 62 passer rating. And the 2022 season seemed to be a low for him where he allowed 6 touchdowns and a 119 rating. But I think a lot of that had to do with the amount of man coverage he was playing. And also keep in mind, okay, that Lattimore's been hurt a lot. So we just take into account, right, Adebo's played for the Saints, right? Marshawn Lattimore was supposedly their number 1 corner. Lattimore had only played 10 games and 7 games the last 2 years for New Orleans, okay? And then before that, he played 16 in 2021. So he was even the CB1 at times for that team as well, for like a good portion of that time. So throwing that out there as well as he's been able to break out. So Adebo, really good player. I think this is a great signing for the Giants. They needed a corner more than any team in the NFL, and they've got themselves a young, promising, good one as long as he's able to bounce back from his injuries. Now, next you have James Hudson, a tackle to provide some depth for the Giants. This guy has been a solid replacement level tackle in the NFL. Nothing too special, but worth discussing. So I actually think the Giants' tackle position is not in bad shape. Andrew Thomas is a really good player at left tackle. Jermaine Illuminor is very steady at right tackle, 53rd in the NFL. Thomas, 26th. Thomas only played 416 snaps this past year, which is a reason why you sign a guy like James Hudson, who played 222 snaps this past year. He's had decent moments. This year was not his best at 50.4. 6'5", 313. Not that old, a former 4th round pick. Okay. Can play. He is listed. They list him as the backup left tackle. So he's a guy that if Thomas gets hurt again, he can plug, he can play. He doesn't grade particularly well on PFF. I'm going to check some of his stats just in terms of like games started and things because I'm not exactly sure. But he played 4 games this year for Cleveland, started 3 of them. He started 7 games in 2023 out of 16 that he played. 3 starts in 2022 and 4 starts in 2021. So not a large sample size, but he certainly played enough to get a good kind of understanding of him being a backup in the NFL in that Cleveland offensive line. He's 25 years old. He turns 26 in May. So another like 26-year-old guy that maybe has a little bit of upside, but decent backup swing tackle type of player. And Chauncey Golston also signed with the Giants. This one's pretty exciting. Chauncey Golston just had a breakout season with the Dallas Cowboys. This is kind of a surprise because he was a starter in Dallas and he wouldn't be an edge starter in New York because they have Kayvon Thibodeau on one side, Brian Burns on the other. Golston would be their 3rd edge rusher in most situations, replacing probably Azeez Ojulari. Golston, 6'5", 268. He's a bigger edge. He's pretty good against the run. 5.5 sacks this past year, 56 tackles, 8 quarterback hits. Had an interception as well. No forced fumbles, but 5 passes defensed and found a way to get his hands on the football. He's somebody that is trending up. So that's a good thing. Whenever you sign, these are 3 players that are all kind of trending up. So that's good news for the Giants. That speaks to savvy signings and savvy scouting. 56th by PFF was his grade this past year. He played the most snaps for any edge player in Dallas, 790 last year, because of injuries to not Dorrance Armstrong, who left for the Commanders, Micah Parsons, and DeMarcus Lawrence. He has been graded well throughout his career, 34th in 2022, 43rd in 2023, 56th in 2024. Neither his run defense grade or his pass rush grade is particularly great. Okay, 76th, 71st. But he was pretty productive this year, played a ton of snaps, and his overall grades have been pretty good. So it's kind of interesting that they haven't really graded him that well at either spot, but he's been good overall, which is kind of funky. But anyways, that's just something I noticed. So a 3rd rusher, I think that's what he is. Probably ideally, he had to step up last year and he had to play a ton of snaps because of the injuries and things like that. But as a third rusher, I feel like he's a good signing. And he's still pretty young. He's 26. $19.5 million is not egregious by any means for a defensive end that has the capacity to start and play starting snaps. He had 37 pressures last year. 37 pressures last season, would have ranked 52nd in the NFL. They list him on PFF as having 7 sacks. If that matters to you, I said 5.5 in the normal traditional stats. In terms of stops, sometimes, PFF lists their own sacks. He also had 30 stops in run defense, which was 23rd in the NFL as well. And diving deeper into his pass rushing productivity, I think the Giants, I'm looking at the Giants right now, and I feel like they can compete with the Cowboys for that third slot in the NFC if they can figure out their quarterback. I feel like the Giants have made some nice moves so far for not too much money. They haven't been super expensive. Young players, just in their prime. The difference between the Cowboys and the Giants is really just quarterback. I feel like their rosters are relatively similar, but, Dak versus whoever the heck the Giants quarterback. We'll see if it's Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, who it ends up being, guys, but I think this is overall good start to free agency for this team. It was only 5.1, so that's probably where the dip in the grading is. 5.1 pass rush productivity, which kind of speaks to sacks, what you can generate on a per play basis. 5.1 is 91st in the NFL, which is not great. But, like I said, some good things to look at. So, yeah, some really nice moves by the Giants. Love Adebo. I like Golston, especially for the price. I'm surprised he actually didn't get more. I think Chris Board's a solid add for their special teams. And Hudson is a decent backup tackle. And he's young. So, yeah, pretty good moves for the Giants. Nothing too expensive either, which is nice to see. The New York G-Men had a secondary problem in 2024. But in 2025, they have now signed the best safety on the market in his prime, fresh out of Coquitlam, British Columbia, my guy, Jevon Holland, 6'1", 205-pound Jevon Holland. He is only 25 years old. Just turned 25, by the way. He's 25 years old. He already hit free agency, and he will be a rich man. 3 years, $45 million. Now, Giants fans have been a little bit concerned about letting walk McKinney to the Packers, who was arguably the best safety in football. I'm sorry, last year. But Holland will be a nice little prize for your tiers last year, okay? He's an excellent player. I love his style of play. He combines a rare speed, a rare dimension of range, and physicality. So he brings a punch, he brings a pop, but he also can really run. He's one of the fastest safeties in football. He was a second-round pick, 36th overall by Brian Flores in 2021 in the Miami Dolphins, okay? He's played 4 seasons with the Dolphins. This year, he played only 15 games. He had 62 tackles, 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits. I feel like he was better in Flores' defense than he was in this past defense. But he had 2 interceptions in his first 2 seasons in his career. He had multiple sacks in his first 2 years. He actually had 10 passes defense as a rookie. And in coverage, he allowed an 89 passer rating this year and a 54% completion percentage, which is very good for a safety. Looking at his grading, I don't necessarily agree. 56th grade this year. Last year, he was 3rd in the NFL. As a rookie, he was 4th. So he's had 2 years where they've graded him exceptionally, elite, and 2 years where he's been just solid, 40th and 56th. This year, he graded better as a run defender, 31st out of 93. His coverage did suffer with 65th out of 96, but I just said his completion percentage was pretty good. Most of his snaps, 434 free safety snaps, Box snaps, 235. I feel like he can get away and play both, but I feel like primarily he is best as a free safety because he has unique range and speed, and he has the ability to diagnose the pass and fly to the football and hit you, or pick a pass off, or tip a pass, okay? Holland, I feel like in Bowen's defense, or the Titans, Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, this is a good fit, in my opinion, from that perspective. I think the free safety has always been very important to that defense. Think Kevin Byard, previously in Tennessee, a ball hawk, rangy safety that can cover a lot of ground. He is an Oregon Duck formerly, and I feel like he's a really good fit for the Giants. I think he fixes a lot of things that they had go wrong last year. A lot of deep balls, a lot of passes down the field. Holland will cover that up. And along with Paulson Adebo, which I broke down already, love that signing for you guys. He's going to be an excellent CB1 when he's healthy. You've got two young, fresh, good players out of free agency in your secondary to complement the rest of your secondary. Tyler Nubin, the second-round pick out of Minnesota, I believe, last year. I think it was Minnesota. Good player, talented, smart player. He's going to be much better as a strong safety to complement Holland. Drew Phillips from the nickel position, who was absolutely fire for you guys last year. So Deonte Banks still needs a little bit of development. Maybe he's not it, but he'll definitely be better as a CB2. So I really love Holland in New York. I think that's going to be a great place for him. Shout out to him, and shout out to Coquitlam, British Columbia. Roy Robertson-Harris. I actually, believe it or not, guys, I went to a running camp with him. He's 4 years younger than me, but I actually ran against his brother. His brother played football with my buddy. Shout out to Chase. Holland. I know the Hollands. I went to their running camp. Just a little history. Roy Robertson-Harris. All right. One of my favorite guys in the NFL. You guys know I love Roy Robertson-Harris. He's been one of those underrated players. 6'5", absolute behemoth human beings, 290 pounds. But he looks like he's like 6'10" when you watch him play. He had a really good 2023, but he fell off in 2024. Now, he only played 6 games in Jacksonville in 2024. He had 11 pressures in those 6 games in a new defense, which he did not fit well. Then he went to Seattle, and he never really got a chance to shine or play. So really, I think the Giants are getting a great deal here on Roy Robertson-Harris on a 1 year, I believe it's 2 years, $10 million. That's a great contract, considering he didn't really get a chance to shine in Seattle or Jacksonville due to the scheme change. And in 2023, he had 42 pressures, 4 sacks, 6 hits, and 32 hurries, and 13 stops. He's a well-rounded player. I think he can rush the quarterback and mess plays up, and he can also defend the run. I think he's a better D lineman 2 rather than a D lineman 1, if that makes sense. So he'll be really good at complementing a guy like Dexter Lawrence. He'll be really good at complementing him. Last year was actually the most pressures of his NFL career in 2023. The year previous, it was also an uptick. 2021, 2022, 2023, an uptick. Now, maybe he fell off a bit because he is getting a little bit older. So there's a possibility there. But, he's 31, turning 32 in July. But as like a second or third defensive lineman, he's excellent. I also think he fits the system if they're going to play. He could play a 5-tech role. I feel like he could play a little bit of nose tackle, but that's going to be Dexter Lawrence. So as an end, I think he's pretty good in that role, or even as their second guy in the interior on passing snaps and passing downs and sub packages. Roy Robertson-Harris will be great in those situations too. So I think this is a great pickup. I love the build right now. I think the Giants defense is actually drastically better on paper by signing Chauncey Golston, Roy Robertson-Harris, Paulson Adebo, and Jevon Holland. 4 starters, honestly. Like, Golston is kind of like the third edge rusher, but Roy Robertson-Harris will start. Paulson Adebo will start. Jevon Holland will start. They need to figure out quarterback, but honestly, their defense has gotten a lot better this offseason, so I like what they've done there.